Hi, it's Carissa. I wanted to make an informational video today about what PCOS is. Ever since I posted my first TTC trying to conceive video with PCOS, I've had a lot of friends and family members ask, what is PCOS? Can you try to explain this? What is going on? What is the imbalance? I also wanted to make this video for people who just found out that they have PCOS and they want kind of a quick version, something that is easy to understand, because there's a lot of information and a lot of big words and it sounds really complicated. So I thought I would dumb it down a bit and just try to make it easy to understand. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. Ultimately what it is it is an imbalance of your reproductive hormones. Your reproductive system is made up of 4 things. Number 1, your vagina. Yes, I said it. Number 2 is your uterus, and then your fallopian tubes and your ovaries. So what happens every month, and I'm going to talk about a very normal cycle first, and then I'm going to talk about how a cycle goes with PCOS. So on a normal basis, what happens is that your pituitary gland, which is located at the very base of your brain, it will release 2 hormones. The first one is called FSH, which stands for follicle stimulating hormone. The second one is called LH, which is called luteinizing hormone. And both of these are released into your bloodstream, and they tell the follicles inside of your ovaries to start maturing your eggs. And once your eggs start maturing, they will then release estrogen into your bloodstream. And then the estrogen in your bloodstream then tells your follicle to release the most mature egg. And this is called ovulation. So you ovulate, it goes down your fallopian tubes, and if you're trying to conceive, then, hopefully fertilization will happen. And if you're not trying to conceive, then obviously the egg will pass through and be shed with the rest of the lining in your uterus. And then the rest of the eggs that were maturing will then dissolve. So that's what happens on a normal menstrual cycle for most everybody who doesn't have any issues with hormones or their reproductive system. So next I'm going to explain how an abnormal process with polycystic ovarian syndrome works. So the difference of what happens is that your pituitary gland releases too much LH, which is the luteinizing hormone. It's an abnormal amount, and unfortunately, since it's not the right amount or it's too much, then it doesn't tell your follicles to mature your eggs, and because your eggs are not maturing, then they will not release estrogen, and because there's no estrogen released, then it doesn't tell your ovaries and your follicles to then release the egg. So ovulation doesn't happen. And obviously, if ovulation doesn't happen, there's no fertilization. So, ultimately, that is the biggest cause of infertility. So what happens to your eggs if they're not matured and released and fertilized, or if they're not fertilized and they get shed through your menstrual cycle, then they stay in your ovaries and they become fluid-filled sacs, and ultimately they can lead to polycystic ovarian cysts. Polycystic ovarian cysts, and they can rupture and be extremely painful. So because the LH hormones are so high and abnormal, the second thing that starts happening is that your pancreas will start to release insulin. And combined with too much LH, this can lead to a production of too much of the male hormone testosterone. And not only can you find this out through blood work and, a bunch of tests at your doctor's office, you can also tell these things when you start getting adult acne, or you see little hairs growing and you have to pluck them out. These are other signs of having too much testosterone in your body and not enough estrogen. So currently there is no cure for polycystic ovarian syndrome, but there are ways to treat it, make it more manageable, and try to regulate your system and your cycles through medication. There are a few medications that doctors usually will start you off at to try to regulate things and try to regulate your hormones. The first one is a hormonal birth control that tries to regulate your cycles and your hormones. The second one is an anti-androgen medication. This works on clearing up your face and your acne, lowering your testosterone levels, and obviously clearing up the odd hairs that show up. And the third one, which is the most common, is called metformin. And what metformin does is it tries to decrease your insulin levels and regulate your cycles. So those are the three main ones that doctors start you off on. And if after time, usually they're very long-term medications, so usually after 6 months to a year of being on these medications, then the doctor will try something that is a lot more invasive. It's a lot more difficult and harder on your body. There are other medications called Clomid and Femara, called Clomid and Femara, and they're very strong surges of hormones that try to force your cycle so that you menstruate at the right time, and then they mature your egg so that you release the mature egg, and obviously a mature egg can be fertilized, and if you're trying to conceive, then obviously you get pregnant. So there is hope with PCOS. You just really need to talk to your doctor about it. So I hope that answered majority of the questions about what PCOS is. If you have any other questions for me, or if you want to see my first video, feel free to click below. I'm going to leave a link there. Thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe if you'd like.